confidence is a massive issue, particularly when players initially drop out.
What makes you hungrier than the person next to you that says the same? How are you going to get there and that person is not?
I was always told a quote when I was like 18, just my first ever job as an internship at AFC Bournemouth in the academy. You have to be rejected 10,000 times to be successful. And so that, I was like, wow, if that's how many times I have to get rejected to maybe win the Premier League, that's the process I've got to go through. I just reached out any means necessary, and I would just sit there every morning and just guess emails.
That's hungry.
One of these is going to land. One of them's going to land. And when it lands, that's the one I've got to make count.
What is your advice to players that are subs and need help?
Design yourself an identity that will allow you to go and be a good substitute. We've just started going to academies, so 18s to 21s, and helping players design another identity, which is them as a finisher or as a substitute.
Hello everyone, welcome today to this exclusive episode of the Select Generation podcast. I'm really excited about the episode today because we are joined by Sammy Lander. Sammy is the world's first substitution coach in football. And probably you're listening to this and you have a lot of questions. That's the whole point of this podcast, is for me to throw a load of questions at Sammy. We're in South London today. Sammy, first off, thank you so much for your time. For someone that's just listened to this as a substitution coach, who are you? What's your story?
Yeah, no, a big thank you for letting me come on today and talk subs. There are a lot of people that try and I don't get away when I start talking subs, so to be given the platform is an honour. I think the way it's different and it's a bit niche, but the way I describe it is that I think football can be quite traditional, and I think what I go and do is deliver a methodology that helps players in their journey and coaches in their process to help substitutions become better utilised, because I think it's one of the most underutilised parts of football at the moment.
So what is a substitution coach? What do you do?
My job is two ways of looking at it. The first is I work with coaches and I work with managers to become more data driven with ways that we can use substitutions. So there have been some examples. When I first started this concept, I did this huge scale interview where I just talked to as many managers and coaches and just said, talk to me about substitutions. Is it good? Is it easy? Is it hard? And the common theme was that a lot of them rely on like gut instinct and like a hope. And I think when you look at the Premier League and you look at the fine margins that separate 5th to 8th, do you know what I mean? And the prize money that then comes associated with that, you don't want to be doing that on a hope or a gut instinct. So we're trying to find ways to become more objective. We're a little bit more deliberate with how we're using substitutions. The flip side of that is then I work with players because I think it's a very challenging role to have in football. Being a substitute is difficult. I'm not a player yet that really speaks positively of the role. There's a site corner, social corner, there's the physical, the technical, the tactical. So it's putting a process in place for them so that they can become the best substitute that they can be.
It's really interesting because thinking about it, obviously when I saw your profile, I was like, substitution coach, that's really interesting. Do you need that? Do you not need that? Because football subs is like hope. Manager probably thinks, okay, that player had a bad first touch, I'm going to bring him on because that player's not performing well. But when you think about it and just listening then to what you're talking about, it is true that you do subs based on gut and not data. What made you realise that this was something that you could add value to a team? Was it a moment? Did a coach ask you to do it specifically? Were you just like, I think this is valuable? Like, why? Like, what prompted you to want to be a substitution coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably several factors that generated my momentum into the role. The first was when I experienced myself being a substitute. So we just spoke about the story off air there, but I went through, as a team, we went through furlough. We had like a bare 11, 12 players. I was then named as a substitute, but I was sort of a coach at the time, so I was sort of this dual role for several games in a row, and then all of a sudden we were in the FA Cup and our strike had gone down, and it was my moment to go on and win the game for us. But unfortunately I didn't get on, but it was a real taster of what it's like to be a substitute, and it was like, wow, that is shocking.
Why was it shocking?
Because I'm sat in this bench coat, I'm eating jelly babies, I'm a coach, so I'm allowed to do that. But sat in a bench coat, I've not moved for 40 minutes, I haven't touched the ball for 45, I'm tuned in with the game because I'm a coach, but there are players that maybe won't be. You've sort of been, I was actually the only player on the bench, so I look around, there's no one really to resonate with. It's a very isolating experience. All of those little things I've just mentioned aren't geared towards high performance. They're not geared toward going and fulfilling your potential. And so it's like, how can we address those things? Because there are players that will resonate with that. And then subsequently that will come after this sort of like feeling and experience was I went and looked at the data. Now, there is almost no data out there for substitutions. It's a really untouched area. No sort of big platform provides substitution-specific data. So then all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, if I can supply that, I found a niche, I found a hole in the market that can go and allow me to go and sell myself to clubs. But secondly, when I started creating this data, there's a lot of quite negative data in what I would say, in that it's, if you were to show a manager that, they would probably be quite disappointed that that's what their substitution turnover rate was, or points gained from losing position, or goal contributions from a substitute. It was quite damning.
So you're on the bench and you're thinking, wow, this sucks to be a substitute. You're looking around. Did that really make you think, I want to, like, because I'm just thinking about it, there's probably a billion other players that have been in that position and done nothing about it. So, like, do you like being an entrepreneur? Do you like coaching and it was different? Are you always someone that's trying to find something new? Like, what made you start that rather than someone else?
Again, it's a good question, and I suppose I can only talk from why I've done it and why other people haven't. I don't know, but you've got to be a little bit brave, I think, to go and do it. I've faced a lot of criticism. I've faced a lot of
people laughing at you.
Yeah, people that don't want to entertain the idea, and that's fine. Football's a game of opinions. I'm not too bothered about that. I think there's always someone that will listen. But ultimately, as well, I was a kid from Dorset. You know, I had no famous surname. I've got no famous granddads or dads that played. Very, very humble family, and I want to go win the Premier League. And for someone like me to go and do that, it would be quite challenging. So I need to probably do it a little bit differently. And I think putting yourself on the map as this role in this niche and market yourself like that, it's going to give me a hell lot more of a platform than I had before.
So what is the first step? You are on the bench. You think this is not a good experience. I want to help the next person. I want to be a substitution coach. Do you create a business plan? Do you just go and talk to other managers and say, hey, is this a good idea? Something you see value in? Do you make a report? What is the first step?
I drove home, and on the way home, I just remember thinking, like, I've got to start writing all this down, because you know when you start snowballing something, you go, oh God, I thought about that, and then but that would lead to that, and then you know I might be able to do that. And I got home and just writ everything. I had this little book at home called an ideas book, and it was all sort of based around what's going to help me make an impact in the pro game. So I had all these different ideas. I can't remember any of them. Goal kick coach, maybe, I don't know, like random little things that I thought maybe I could do that to get to be, you know, amongst the great minds or people. And I put the sub idea in the book, you know, and I sort of woke up Sunday morning and just dived into it, just created a platform and a process of got to speak to managers, because it might not be a problem. Managers might come to me and say, no, we're fine with it, in which case then I'm selling something that someone doesn't want. Talk to as many players as I can, because maybe I have to angle myself as more of a player's coach than a coach's coach, and then get as much as I can to get in front of clubs so that I can pitch a relevant sort of business proposal to say, look, if you give me X, I'm going to return Y. And I think that's really, really important, is that return on investment in innovation in football I think is massive, because I think you've got to show that you can bring something that.
So what is your value proposition? Because obviously I'm thinking, okay, I'm a football club. If this guy can help me make better subs to win my game, is that the value, or what value are you bringing?
Yeah, there's two ways of looking at it. Again, that one is one. So if I come in and you've delivered 5 sub goals last season, but my algorithm or my process for the last 4 clubs I've worked with would deliver 8, then I'm going to give you 3 more goals. You know, if you were to sign a player or a striker that were going to give you 3 more goals, what you'd pay them. I'd like to think my wage is far more modest than maybe what you pay a Premier League footballer. So that's the first way you can do it. But the second way is using sort of the more player-driven data, where you go, look, I've got this player, we worked together for 6 months, this is him talking about how he sees being a sub. And then all of a sudden they're going, wow, like that's powerful. That's a return on investment.
What is the biggest problem for a substitute not performing when they go on?
I think it can be various things, but I think it all stems from the sight corner. You know, don't get me wrong, like we have to make sure people are physically ready.
What do you mean sight corner?
So the psychological way of dealing with a substitute, the way of going, I don't want to be a sub. You know, it's just the last role in football that anyone wants to be. Michael Jordan phrased it brilliant, where he's like, players love coaches that put the ball in your hand, or in this case football, your feet, and they don't like coaches that take it away. So if you're a coach and you're saying you're going to be a substitute, you're the coach that's taking the ball away from them, you know, and that stems, I think, right back down to when you're in, you know, primary school, when you're 7 or 8 years old, and the coach or the teacher doesn't give you a football, you know, that they're not going to be your favourite teacher, are they? And I think it's a similar principle. But it's a very holistic role. You know, we have to do the tech side, tactical side, the social side. There is so much to it, but I think it all starts with the foundation of having players challenge this narrative around being a substitute.
But you're not a psychologist.
I would say I'm a self-taught one. I don't probably market myself as a psychologist because I'm a coach, and I think coach have to be people first. You know, there's a player, but underneath that player there's a person, and you have to understand them in order to do it, and I think that's important.
How do you, right, I'm interested now from like a business or entrepreneurial perspective, right? So do you have a company, or are you an entrepreneur, like self? Or?
Yeah, just sold, yeah.
So if I want you to come into my Premier League club as a substitution coach, do I hire you or do I hire my company, or?
Yeah, you would. So you would hire me. I'm the guy that comes in. Now, there's different ways that you can do this. For Wimbledon, I was there for a year, and I was an employee of Wimbledon. For the other clubs that I've been at since, sometimes it might be an external consultant. So you'll go in and you'll do it through the company. But there's different ways you can do it, really.
So how do you manage? Is it a one-man job? Like, let's say that you're at Wimbledon and then Chelsea come in for you. How are you going to do both?
It's a great question. I work a lot of hours. So largely I will balance as much as I can, and I will almost open slots up to say, look, I can work with X amount of clubs this year or this next period or this summer. Sometimes I work with players, and you might say, look, I can't work that, but if you've got a specific player that you want working on, I can go and coach that player. Do you know what I mean? But it's all about time management. It's all about going.
So do you need to be with the club the whole year, or maybe it's just like for a month you come in and you teach your philosophy or your algorithm or your system, and then it's figured out, or do you need to be there like every day?
Again, different ways of sort of delivering it, depending on what clubs' finances are, and some clubs don't want to maybe complicate the process too much too soon, so they sort of integrate it slowly. But I've worked with clubs in Saudi where I've never been there in my life, but we jump on a video call 3 times a week, and I deliver what the subs are going to do, what the opposition subs are going to do.
Oh, so you're talking to the coach and telling him what subs to make?
Yeah, I would advise. I would never. I would never.
He's the manager.
Yeah, and his head would fall on, or her head would fall on the chopping block. I mean, not mine. So as every expert would come from a position of knowledge and experience and data, and you'd advise. If for some reason they think otherwise, then you support that and you get behind it. But yeah,
what's like the main question that you get around substitutions? Like, what's the main thing that clubs are like? I keep doing this subs and it's not working, or I keep doing this and this. Like, how can I make my subs better? Like, what's the common question?
I would say there's 2. The first is how can you get subs, or how can you get players or people to buy into being a sub, which is a really long answer because it's not. We're people. We're not designed to just sort of like flick something and go decent. That's it. There's lots of sort of different barriers and wins that you have to get along the way to really transform a narrative. Another one that we get from coaches quite a lot is like timing. Like, when's the best time to make a substitute? A lot of managers have pitched to me this like 70-second minute rule. I don't know if you've come across that before, but supposedly that's like the best time to make a sub because of like the data in previous games and all that sort of stuff. I personally disagree. I don't think that's a thing. I don't see how you can generate that sort of like statement to say 70-second minute is the thing. What we try and do is be a little bit more driven with our consistencies. So we try and find sort of ways to be driven with our players. So we'll have an impact time. So it'll be like, look, we've got Sam. He's going to come on at right wing, but he roughly needs 16 minutes to go and make an impact in a game. So now, if you're talking about when you're going to bring him on, the 74th minute is where he's going to be given the most optimal time to go and impact the game of football.
So when you say data, what data are you looking at to say a player needs 16 minutes? How do you come up with that?
A lot of individual data. So we would look at the previous sort of performances that player has registered as a substitute in that sort of position, game state, and we got to a really nice stage at the moment. And again, managers quite like this feature. We can now sort of advise whether a player is overperformed, underperformed, or properly performed in a substitute performance. So we collect the whole league's data from substitution data. So if Charlton make a sub, we track that performance and it goes into our algorithm, our spreadsheet, and that would generate a sort of a radar to say this is what the average sub would do. We could then get your performance and go, well, Sam delivered more shot creation actions, more successful 1v1s, more final third regains than the average sub would. So he's really overperformed in his performance.
Interesting. Do you ever have managers that? So who would hire you? Would it be the manager or the director of football? Or
I think it could be either. Yeah, like I speak to a lot of managers because that's where my relationship will be. My relationship has to be with the manager. So we have to have a relationship where we can sit like this and he can go, no, and I can go, I think this. Do you know what I mean? It has to be honest, and that can be tough when it comes through a sporting director. But there have been sporting directors who've reached out and gone,
I need this.
Think you could add value to our process. Love to bring you in and intro you to the manager.
What's the most important thing in your relationship with the manager?
Honesty, and for me, credibility. You know, like it comes back to, you know, I'm not massively somebody. You know, when I sit opposite some of the managers that I've sat opposite to probably tell them what to do. So you have to come from a position of, look, this is what I did at my previous club. This is what I did with this player. This is what I did to help them, you know, gain 4 points from losing positions into 11 points from losing positions. So that credibility is massive, and I think that then builds trust, which then builds honesty.
And when you say honest, that to me is like obvious. Of course, you need to be honest with the manager. What's like a specific example of being honest to a manager?
You got it wrong. You that wasn't good enough. That player didn't do that. You know, I disagree. I think we should do it like this. You know, it's just honest conversations. I think in football people can be a little bit not in football. I think in life, you know, sometimes people don't always like being honest if it's not what the other person wants to hear. You know, and that's at the end of the day, we're all here to win. Do you know what I mean? I'm sat opposite a manager thinking, if you win, I win. You know, that's how this game works. So we just need to have a conversation. It needs to be constructive. It needs to be respectful. But ultimately, if we get to an outcome where we both get 3 points, it's worth it.
And how do you work with players? Because obviously, when you're working with a manager, like he's the one creating the substitutions, you're advising him. But if I'm a player and I'm like, Sammy, listen, I'm not playing at the moment. I'm on the bench and I'm struggling. When I get on, I don't feel confident. Like, are you working with players one-on-one? Are you calling them? Are you texting them? Like, how would you work with a player?
Every point of contact that you can, like, is so crucial. So again, I don't market myself as a psychologist, but I've done courses. I've done a degree in leadership and management. So I have been educated on understanding sort of cultures, problems, pain points, and that sort of thing. And I think, again, you just said there, it's like, why aren't you confident? You know, why do you not feel confident coming on as a sub? You know, all of a sudden we're then stripping it back, and it's like, oh well, you know, I felt this. I felt the manager didn't trust me. It's like, why doesn't he trust you? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't know, I thought I was preparing really well. And it's like, well, I've got a clip here of you down the touchline, potentially not warming up. You know, you go down, you drop to a knee, you chat to your mate, and then you run back up. And it's like, that isn't going to be the best way for you to prepare yourself to go and impact the game. You know, everything has a reason, in my opinion. And one of the probably the most impactful conversations I've had around identity for players. You know, people resonate with minutes in football. That is what they are from an academy age. That's what you're taught. You're taught to be a player. You're taught to chase minutes. That's what you need to do. Very rarely are you taught that there's another part of the game that you're going to have to do X amount of times in your career. Messi's done it 104 times, been a sub, but no one's probably ever coached that. It's a natural part of the game. Everyone will have to be a substitute. When you're in an academy, I don't think it should be any other way in an academy. You should have minutes, but when you're sort of prescribed a certain amount of minutes, you're never going to understand what it's like to have it the other way around. And I think there is an education that needs to be put in so that players are given the tools to go, decent, well, I'm going to chase every minute I can get, but if I'm thrown in as a sub, I've got a whole other identity or a whole other process that I can use to go and be a good one. Because we talk about the player cycle. Typically a player will start, they'll fall out of the 11 for whatever reason, injury, rotation, form. Then they'll come to being a sub, and likely the way that they get back to being in the 11 is by being a good sub. Who's a bad sub and then goes, right, I'm going to chuck you in. You know, very rarely that's a cycle that we see. So you have to go and be a good sub. How do you be a good sub? Preparation, process, methodology.
How do you be a good sub?
I think it's clarity on what the 11 want. So what the manager wants, I think that's really important. I speak to so many young players that think scoring ultimately is going to get you in the team, and that will help. But if you're winning 4-0, maybe you don't need a goal. Maybe you need to come on, be part of a compact midfield four and shuffle side to side and pride yourself on not getting played through but getting played over. But players don't think like that. Players think like, got to go win my shirt back, got to go do this, got to go create a moment of magic. And sometimes you speak to managers, and there's such a misalignment in what sometimes managers want and players deliver that this manager might not want you to go on and do that. If you come back on and it's 4-0, you've done your job.
So how do I know what the manager wants from me?
That's where the clarity, and that's conversation. That's where honesty has to happen. But sometimes I get it. Football games are intense. Football games are really intense. So communication sometimes isn't always as probably streamlined as it should be. And that's when my role comes in, is that I am the clarity, I am the middle ground, I'm the glue that's just going to bring those conversations together. And we've got to a really nice stage at the moment now. I know there's an Arsenal fan in the room, and their managers come out and use the term finishers recently, which is always a good start. What we have done is we've sort of taken that one step further, and we have type of finishers. So we'll have a closer, we'll have an impactor, we'll have an energizer, we'll have a smoother, destroyer, controller, loads of different names that assign tactical roles to psychological names. Now all of a sudden, if I'm calling you an energizer, in one word I've clarified what I'm going to judge you on. I'm going to judge you on your ability to go and energize a game. We're now getting to a stage with some clubs where we now assign KPIs to those names. So now as an energizer, I'm going to be judged on, maybe my physical stats. If I'm a closer, I'm going to be judged on regains, field tilt, possession, game management. You know what I mean? Every name has its own KPI, and now all of a sudden you're getting identity, you're challenging identity with different names, but you're also putting alignment into what you're calling them. And I think that's been epic to watch.
Wow, that's really interesting, all of that. What is that seems like it would be difficult to train a team or a club or a manager to understand all of that. What is your biggest challenge when you're implementing your ideas or your coaching?
It's a great question, and if I'm honest, I very rarely do I have an issue with any player. It's solving their problem. I don't have to go and be a sub.
The player wants your feedback.
The player wants, like you just said there, that the conversation we had, like that player doesn't feel confident. Well, then he's going to want help. He doesn't want to just keep doing that process. They're going to want to be like, I'm going to want to be a good sub because obviously that's my role. I'm going to have to go and be it. So they are players I find so receptive. Managers are not less receptive, but need a little bit more
convincing.
Yeah, but that comes from me showing what I've done previously. I would say the biggest challenge I face is finding clubs that are open to it. And being able to demonstrate a value as to why it's needed.
And let's say that I've signed with you. You're going to come in and help me be a substitution coach. What's the first thing that you do for me? I'm the manager, right? Sammy, perfect. Let's bring you on. I wanna get my substitutions better. What's the first thing that you do?
Let's create the substitution union. So, yeah, the GK Union is a big thing. You know what I mean? There's a different breed of people out there that are part of the GK Union, and I think I think they're amazing. I love the way it's done. If you really strip it back, what you have is one coach that controls 3 players for one position, and what you get within that is that they all sort of motivate each other. They all help each other warm up, cool down, train. They all encourage each other. It's insane, and it's arguably one of football's oldest specialist coaches. So when people talk about specialist coaches not being a thing, goalkeeping coaches one. And it's arguably one of the most valuable roles in football as well. So what we do is we try and create the substitutions union. So we have a set of values that if you were to drop out of the 11 into the subs union, that you adhere by. So it might be respect, it might be ready, it might be clarity, it might be resilience. That's a conversation that we have with the squad to create those values. It's never me that decides them. And within the union, there is a process that you follow. So again, player drops out. Okay, we're going to be in with me Monday. We're going to review your clips as to why maybe you dropped out. We're going to sort of generate a process from Monday to Thursday to help you become the best sub. So we're going to talk about what the game looks like in the last 20 minutes so that you're prepared to go and face it. We're going to talk about what you can do on a game day to try and make yourself more ready. So the cue cards that help you warm up, clips that are going to help you predict what's the opposition going to do, maybe your own montage that's going to talk about the bits that you've done well as a sub. And then, on a game day, we're going to deliver it. And it's just creating that union, really.
So I'm a substitute. I just got dropped, and I'm really struggling. And I don't know why the manager's dropped me. Maybe I had a bad game, and he said, yeah, you didn't have a bad game, I'm going to swap you in for this other guy. If I'm in that position, what's the first thing that I should do?
As a sub?
As a sub.
So you'll drop into the union, and your job will be become the best substitute you can be.
How?
Because again, we talk about that player cycle. If you want to get back in the 11, which is ultimately what I want for you,
I'm like, I've been playing badly. I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling confident. I'm struggling.
Not feeling confident. Confidence is a massive issue, particularly when players initially drop out. Because again, what we strip it back, minutes equals identity. So when you take away someone's minutes, it's almost like it's personal. Whereas again, what we do is we try and frame this that's a little bit more professional. In that sense that maybe they're just looking at you and going, "You're 6'8". we're not going to make any crosses. We don't need a tall striker. We don't need a target man.
Why
We're
did you
going to
sign
play
me?
with wingers.
Why did you sign me?
I didn't sign you. I could have managed it. But no, yeah. So it's all about having diversity. It's a team game. You know, no one man is designed or woman is designed to be, you know, every single game. The way that we phrase this is that you have to have different strengths, and your strengths are going to come in those moments. So all of a sudden, I'm talking to the 6 foot striker. We're going to go, well, when we're 3-0 up and we're protecting the lead, you're going to be perfect, mate. They're going to be looking for you, and you're going to be the answer, because then they're going to get physical, and then you're going to have to be accounted for, and that's going to be your role. Your role is going to be that 15-minute kill the game, and ultimately, if we come back with 3 points, that's a success for us.
Do you think that anyone could be a substitute coach, or do you have to understand football?
That's a good question. I think you have to understand football.
Why?
Yeah, because I do a lot of profiling around this is what they look like as an opposition, this is what we need.
But if I am purely based on data, let's say ChatGPT or an AI, I've never played a game of football in my life, I'm just a computer and I'm just looking at all of this data and I'm telling you, Sammy, you need to take this player off at 70 minutes. But I don't understand the game.
Well, it's funny you say that. So I've had a few initial chats with sort of AI experts, it's a little bit beyond me, to generate a data-driven way of suggesting subs. So, you know, in Football Manager, do you play Football Manager or FIFA? You know, where you get sort of suggested subs in the corner based on
Fitness
sometimes
levels.
it's based on fitness levels, yeah, but we're trying to find ways that maybe a little bit more tactically or game state driven.
Interesting.
It would be cool to generate something like that, where again, wouldn't have to listen to it, it'd be on a tablet where you go, this striker is entering an unpredictable period, so this striker hasn't generated any key KPIs in the last 3 games of what we're going to need. This player on your bench might be a nice swap to bring this player in. Something along those lines, I think.
That would be really interesting. An AI
could be a
substitution app.
Yeah. And again, but what you lose there is you lose the personal touch. So then all of a sudden, that striker generates those stats, maybe because our process has helped him generate those stats. You know,
because he's more confident and because he's communicated.
Yeah, and at half time we're doing a session and all those sorts of things, and I'm talking to him, and I've got his montage clips at half time, and we're going through what the opposition looked like and how he's going to have to do it.
So you were there on the bench at some of these clubs during games?
Yeah.
And how important is that? Do you think it makes a big difference?
I think it makes a difference if you need it. So again, each club will have their own pain points. Some pain points are we don't know how to sub, so it might be then a manager thing, in which case maybe I don't need to be there because I can, as you say, deliver it online. If the issue is players, it's a little bit easier to be present because you can build relationships, and relationships is where everything starts. We have sort of a club that I worked with in the past whose KPIs were quite low for their subs. The subs that they brought on wouldn't really contribute anything of value. So what we did was we had a session at half time. Obviously we get the full pitch, we get balls, we get half a pitch to use, I suppose. And we would just have a half-time session based on what we saw in the first half. We would just go, well, we've noticed loads of good moments. I've got clips because we filmed the half-times as well, but we've noticed that the full-back and centre-back have really split. There's a huge amount of gap that we can exploit there. Let's set a pattern up and let's run it through 10 times. And then in the second half, you know what the picture's going to look like for you.
You mentioned there about Saudi. I know you've done some work in America. I've been living in the US for about 7-8 years. And culturally, I feel like they're a lot more open-minded with football to try new things. So I wanted to ask you, do you see when you work with different clubs or different, like, even international managers from different countries, do you see a difference in, like, their openness to use your platform? Because my thinking would be, like, in the US, they're very open to new ideas, technology, new adaptions. In England, sometimes maybe it's like, no, this is the way I play and I want to do this and I don't want anyone to change it. I'm very stubborn. Saudi, I have no idea. Do you find different cultures take your feedback differently?
I would say different cultures define substitutes differently in a weird way. So I would say like in Spain, I was talking to a Spanish club, players been substituted off, sort of thrown his shirt down as he's come off, and I've sort of gone, well, that's going to be a conversation that I'm probably going to have to be involved in. Talk to the manager afterwards, and he's sort of gone, I'm fine with that. He's just demonstrated, he just demonstrated passion, and you just go, well, fair enough. Like, that's their culture. Their culture is that he's demonstrated passion. No one in the squad took offence to it. The manager wasn't offended. Player understood that maybe it probably wasn't great to do in that moment, but that was his passion, so he acknowledged it, and you go, well, I don't need to do anything. You know, in a different culture, it might be like, you know, if you're in...
That's disrespectful.
Yeah, it might be a little bit disrespectful. Yeah, you've thrown the club badge on the ground, you've thrown the shirt, do you know what I mean? And you talk about some clubs in Europe where, you know, the club badge is like prestigious. You shouldn't ever walk on it. You shouldn't ever disrespect it. You shouldn't ever... I've been in training grounds where, you know, if a player takes their top off and leaves it on the ground and goes in, they get a fine. because they shouldn't leave the club. But you know what I mean, and that's a whole then different conversation. So you have to understand the culture. So to relate back to your question, I think different cultures see subs differently and have different standards, but my feedback is generally always quite receptive to it.
So you've been involved in, let's say, the US. How did you get out to why? How did that connection happen for you to go and work at a USL club?
Yeah, that was good. So that was with a coach called Brian Martin of Loudon. So they were linked to DC.
DC United second team.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. And it was through I did American radio a couple of times. It was a really good experience, and they got quite a good listening. I think it was New York City FC's radio that I did. Lots of people tune into it, and like with a lot of my stuff, people just reach out on LinkedIn, say, come across your work, sounds kind of interesting, can we set up a call? I jump on a call, I do my presentation, I do a little bit of research beforehand to identify whether their subs need me.
Nice.
Maybe their subs are brilliant, you know what I mean, in which case you don't need me. And in this case, we identified something that I felt I could go and impact, and it sort of started a relationship between us.
So they reached out to you, or you reached out to them?
They reached out to me.
And when a club is reaching out to you, what do they need? Like, what are they asking for? Just better subs in general? Or?
Yeah, I think initially I think a lot of people take the call because of curiosity, a little bit like probably what we've done here today, where the title, and I'm not big on the title, but the title doesn't really give away loads of what I do. It's a subs coach. I have mates that sometimes think I just tell people to go and warm up. There's no real context around what I do. So I think a lot of people go, let's jump on a call and let's just hear what he does and how he does it and all that sort of thing.
What's the thing that most clubs are excited about, or they're like, oh wow, you can really do that for me?
That we can change players and people's perceptions around the role of a substitute, which I think is massive. I think it's so good. Like, you talk about a manager's tenure as being 15 months, so it's a really, really short stint of a lifespan at the moment. But if I can get a player to buy into your process for longer, sustainability is massive in today's game. You're going to generate a longer squad cohesion, which is what so many managers want. They want that squad. They want that togetherness, and it's hard. It is hard to be together when you're leaving people out. That's a very unusual process to go through, is to feel together but to leave someone out. So to have them accounted for is quite good. And a lot of people say just the point person for the substitutes, that substitution union, point person again, is a lot of managers enjoy that concept, enjoy that part of it.
So in terms of your schedule in your day to day, run us through your day from 9 o'clock till whatever time you finish.
We'll go match day -1, so we'll go Friday, game Saturday. Typically we'll do a little bit of shape work. Training will be sort of 10:30 onwards, and they'll do a little bit around the game, so what that game is going to look like on a Saturday. What players then start to just figure out a little bit then is whether they're in the lineup or not in the lineup. So if we're doing shape work and then they're on the opposition's team, I see all the time body language just starts to go a little bit because they're thinking, I'm not going to play all this. So then that's where my work comes in. My work comes in to start addressing those things, to start being attentive to it, because if the manager is addressing those, his eye is arguably not on the starting 11, which is where it should be, because those guys have done brilliantly to be given the start and worked really hard to get us the points. So my job is that. What we then do is we have a substitute-specific session. So I will have done analysis probably Thursday, Wednesday, about what the opposition are going to look like in the last 20 minutes of games, whether they're winning, losing, being outshot, outpossessed, home, away, 10 men, 11 men, 9 men, just to create a playbook almost of every scenario of what they're going to look like, so that we can then feed that back into our subs of what the game is going to look like for when they enter it. I think a lot of what we do in opposition analysis is we tell players what the game is going to look like from minute one, from 0-0, from the start of a game. But subs come on after 75 minutes and changes and goals and red cards and fouls and atmosphere. The game's completely different for them. So we have a session that sort of aims to deliver their pictures specifically to them. Friday afternoon we'll have then conversations with subs, maybe about why they're being a sub, what their game day is going to look like, a little bit around their montage that we're going to deliver for them, so they each receive a montage of their best bits as a sub, and then we head into a game day, and my phone is just always on in the evening in case a player wants to have a chat.
Interesting. So if I'm a coach listening to this and I'm really intrigued and I'm really curious, because I bet there'll be some coaches that are, I could really use a substitution coach like my I haven't ever thought about any of these topics, and that's something that I never thought about. What's the main piece of advice that you would give to a coach to improve their subs?
honest. Be honest as possible. So when you're leaving someone out of the squad, be honest. So if it is for tactical reasons, tell them. If it's for form, tell them, because ultimately they just want to get back in the 11. So
I've got a squad of 20. How am I supposed to, before every game, Tuesday, Saturday, text all 10 of them? Hey, sorry, you're not on the team today.
No, it sounds like you need a subs coach then, because that's my job. But no, that is challenging. And again, that's why this role exists. Is because you also go create
delegation, and time management.
Massively, yeah. Klopp's a genius at it. You know, he understands that there's going to be 10 experts that are under him that are each specialised in their field. Now he will make the final decision, and it'll all come back into him, and he'll be the centre hub. But if he can make that easier, then you know what I mean. It allows him to be more sort of focused on the things that need to be focused on. And this role exists because I think in a footballing process, subs get cut. The corners of subs get cut a lot, if that makes sense. So we talk about analysis. Well, all the analysis is going to be on the starting 11, and it's going to be on the opposition, and rightfully so, because these guys work Tuesday, Saturday, particularly in the EFL. It's brutal, you know, and they're doing it for maybe quite a humble wage. They're not going to have time to then go, right, I want to put 3 hours aside and get all the clips together of the subs, you know, which is when that's what I do. You know, you're talking about coaching. I can go and sit on a Thursday evening and plan a substitute-specific session based on all the work that I've done. I just think you can't. There sometimes isn't enough time in the day to account for everything, and that's why specialists exist, in my opinion.
Do you think that? Are you aware of a lot of substitution coaches?
So there are 3. There is myself
in the world
and 2 others, yeah, and I've helped those 2 become subs coaches.
Why aren't there more?
I think it's growing. I think innovation takes time. It's a process. People want to see results before they go for it. Do you know what I mean? And understandably so. Like if I just started doing something random and it didn't prove, no one would follow, and I get that. I don't think they should. So I think we're starting to see results now. My book came out in December. That publicised a lot of what I do, and I think that's generated a whole nother wave of movement towards it, really, and people reading the book and going, I could probably give this a go, or we could probably use that, or that's something.
What's your biggest success story or case study?
Got 2. Probably, again, one from either side. The first is we warmed the player up at half-time after and I've got this in clip, and this is always the presentation, like, winner, when you deliver this, it's the best thing in the world to watch. We identified a tactical issue in the first half. Through me and the players being on the bench, we've gone, look, we need to address this. It's something we've identified. It linked to our opposition analysis pre-game, so we already identified it happened, which is always a coach's dream. We got half-time. I'm warming up our striker, because we're going to make a double sub. So I'm warming up our striker of what the game's going to look like for him. I then give delegation to the centre-back sub to go warm up the winger, the sub-winger, and say, look, mate, I'm going to go warm the striker, get the striker ready for out-to-in runs, or get the winger ready for out-to-in runs, you know. So practice it to feet, practice it in behind, practice out-to-in, half space, all the different scenarios that you can think of, go and practice it. They run through it. Obviously, we're filming this. 18 minutes later, we bring on that exact winger. He performs the exact action, the exact movement, and scores from it. And you just go, that's it.
But does the head coach not feel a bit intimidated, like you're going to take his job? Because
that's an ego.
But that sounds more like an assistant coach than a subs coach, no?
Yeah, but then what the assistant coaches are doing is they're in the changing room making sure the starting 11 are at it, because you know the ball doesn't get played to the winger if the starting 11 aren't aware that that's also something we need to do.
So you said ego there, because I want to talk about this, because I feel like there's a lot of egos in football, obviously. How do you? I know we talked previously about like honesty and having a relationship with a coach, but if I'm the head coach and I'm playing a certain way and you're consistently telling me play a different way, or this is what I've identified, he's going to be like, is there any times where he's like, Sammy, like, you're the substitution coach, you're not the head coach, let me deal with that? Or?
Not to an extent, because again, I would never go and... You have to understand people, so every manager I work with, you have to understand how they work, and you have to complement that, you know, don't go and sort of cause friction with it. So my job is to go in and understand, right, this coach likes being talked to on the touchline. He likes me going into his ear and going, by the way, just notice this, that might be something that we train at half-time.
As long as he knows you're both centred around winning the game.
That's it.
He knows you're trying to help him.
Yeah. And like I said, I would never cross any lines where it was like, you got to go and do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're far more experienced than I am. They're far more educated. They're far more coached. You know, I'm fairly young in this game. You know, I'm still learning things myself. So there is never there's never a contradiction. And if I'm honest, the best managers that I work for, who typically entertain this idea, don't have an ego. because they understand that if you've researched a topic for 10 years, or 5 years in this case,
Right.
and you come to me with examples and data and things like that, then you should be receptive to it.
Would you ever be an assistant coach or a head coach, or do you just want to do subs?
Yeah, I'd love to be a manager.
Really?
Yeah. The subs coach is, again, I didn't grow up thinking I want to be a subs coach. You know, I didn't fall into it, I planned it, but it was done to get me to a level, you know, and I've got a couple other innovations that I want to bring into football. And then, then I want to go be a coach. That's what I love. I love being on the grass, I love working with people.
Why do you love being a coach?
Helping people achieve things, I think, is one of the most rewarding feelings in the world. And I think, like, if I didn't work in football and I had to go have another role, it would relate to that. It would relate to helping people achieve something. So whether that be like a teacher, whether that be a coach in like another sport, whether that be a coach in a industry where you can help people achieve things, like a business coach. I just think the feeling of helping someone get from A to B is one of the most rewarding feelings. And it links to being a sub. You're taking them from off the bench to on the pitch. I think that's sick.
For a player that's listening to this that would really want your advice, that would be like, wow, that would be really interesting. I'd really like to have a subs coach. I think that would really help me. What is your advice to players that are subs and need help?
Design yourself an identity that will allow you to go and be a good substitute. So we've just started going to academies, so 18s to 21s, and helping players design another identity, which is them as a finisher or as a substitute. So we have this form, and it's like, what do you want to call yourself? Because you know, finisher is the term we give them, but they might see themselves as an impactor, because they might be a winger that's really flary. So I'm going to be called an impactor. Define it. So what does impactor mean to you? Because it might mean something to something else, or it might mean something different to the manager. So again, that alignment's being created. Give me 3 exercises that you can do at half time that are going to help you become an impactor. What are you going to do in the first half and the second half when warming up to enable yourself to become an impactor? And then what are the values that I can hold you to that an impactor looks like? And all of a sudden you get all of this information on an A4 piece of paper. Every single time they're a sub, that's it. That's their process. That's what they follow. And there's been some like really, really good success with academies following that.
How do you... I want to talk a little bit about like AI and technology and data, because it's something that I really enjoy. I studied like data at university.
Oh, nice.
And I always like storytelling with data. Like the data to me is like pointless if you can't really have a story behind it, right? You need a story and be easy to explain. So in terms of like data in football, for you as a subs coach, but for you as a coach in general, where do you see AI, data, technology going with football?
That's a great question. I think at the moment it's brilliant to offer reviews and like conclusions and like statements, like post game. Like you could smash the data in and say, what was our final third productivity like? And it would generate saying, you came 14th in this case, you came, third in this case. On previous games, you relied on this, but it hasn't done this. What I think it could get to is when it has a bit of a consciousness and it gets a bit of like repetitiveness, it can make suggestions. It could then go, in the previous games, you've done this against similar setups and it's wielded success. This is something I think that you should do, and I think it would be scary, but I think it'd be insane to see.
Do you think a robot could manage a football team?
No, because it's a people's game. It's a people's game. It's like there are too many personalities in football that I don't think robots could manage.
But what happens if a manager is solely reliant on AI to take all of his decisions?
Do
you think that the manager just manages the locker room and the assistant coach is the robot?
Yeah, well, I know of clubs at the moment who are looking at similar processes where they maybe prioritise man managers because they can handle a changing room, they can handle personalities, and they have like a data department that will feed experts' decisions into the manager, and then ultimately the manager has to make the final shout because it's him that's gonna or her that is gonna face the consequences of it. But like you said, that I see Jurgen Klopp a little bit like that, not to take away from anything else that he's doing, but like he's surrounded by experts. Now, if one of those experts were to be AI, I don't think that would be insane to think. I think it would be beneficial. I would be surprised if clubs didn't have that already, or if the Brightons, the Brentfords.
What is the biggest? What is the most valuable piece of data for me as a football manager?
Well, That's a great question. I wouldn't know because I'm not a football manager, so I think
From
it
your
would depend.
experience.
From my experience, I would say process-driven data that relates to their game model.
What does that mean specifically?
So if they are a pressing team, they're looking at what their pressing stats look like, you know. But if you're a two banks of four team, the pressing stats are irrelevant. What I see more and more of is that teams try and find data that is related to what they are wanting to achieve. So process-driven data, because I think there is some data out there that is useless because it's not relatable, it's not personable to your process.
Like what? What would be an example of useless data in football?
So like if you don't pride yourself on pressing, final third regains probably isn't going to be something that you look and go, God, we're 20th. That's a concern. You know what I mean? Because you're going, that's not how we play the game. That's not what we relate to. That's not what we resonate with. That's not going to be something that we're going to judge success on. But if you said, well, we are conceding X amount of crosses in the league, third amount of crosses in the league, we're conceding that many crosses, then you would go, that's data that's concerning because our system is regimented to stop that.
Do you think football is becoming boring?
Not for me, no. I think it's becoming more tactical. In which case, I enjoy that sort of side of things. I love the tactical side of the game, and I think that at the moment, because there is more and more riding on football, people are probably being more and more aware of things and cautious of things. In which case, then there may be being, I'm trying to think of a good example, like a really flary player maybe being accounted for less because maybe there is something to say an 11 might suffer because of that one flare. Do you know what I mean? And maybe managers are going, it's easier to have 11 that are all part of a system. I think that's a good way that I look at it, is that I think at the moment systems I think are coming more into the game and individuals are probably lowering a little bit in the terms of their uniqueness. And I think back in the day, there didn't used to be huge tactical systems. You know, if you look at like 1970s football, they'll say themselves it was fairly not simple, but it was fairly straightforward. But there was like wicked players on the team that would win or lose you a game. And I think it's probably balancing out a little bit more. And I think we're witnessing probably a slight change.
Are you Premier League clubs? I'm sure, obviously, have massive financial backing, so they're easily ready to get experts and use data and all of these tools. Do you think that non-league football league clubs will also invest a lot in AI?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think, like, talk about set piece coaches. I think that's a good way to look at it. Is that, like, again, even to myself as a subs coach, 5-6 years ago, it didn't really a thing. We had one at Wimbledon, and everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe they won in League One. Do you know what I mean? And now you look and you go, pretty much every team in the Premier League has one. Most teams in the Champ have one. I know clubs in League One. I know clubs in League Two. I know non-league clubs that have set piece coaches. So I think, again, return on investment. If you can demonstrate one, why would you not add value to a process to show that it can return what you're looking for?
Interesting. I would love to get in on AI. So let's have a talk, and we can start something, create an app or a ChatGPT or a website.
We'll start a sub recommendation.
That'd be good. And I know you wrote your book. So how did that come about? Like, why did you feel the need to write a book?
I almost felt a little bit like maybe it was coming to a close, like that sort of like mini cycle of my journey of like subs. Like maybe it was nice to, because again, there's a couple of things I want to do that's in football that are other things, and I thought the best way to maybe close this chapter, not that I'll ever close the door fully on subs because it's my passion and it's given me so many good experiences, but like it'd be a nice way to put someone out there for other people to read and resonate with. And I get so many messages and stuff that I can't really say too much about because I have to keep some of my work, protected, so I'm relevant and stuff. But this book is probably a little bit more of an insight into what my days look like.
Why should I read your book? What's it about?
I think from a coach's point of view, it helps you build a methodology. It helps you build a substitution methodology. From a player's point of view, it's gonna inform you on some of the impacts and processes that I've done for Premier League players that have helped them become better subs. And I think it's going to resonate with your journey. And ultimately, it's a football book, so if you're a football fan, an insight into sort of stuff behind the closed door that I think we don't really get to see much of. I think there's a very, very fine amount of football club that are in the like spotlight and the media. I think this book delivers a bit of an insight of some of the experiences behind that closed door.
What's been your biggest challenge as a substitution coach?
at the start, finding enough people to listen to me. Finding enough people to go, that's not crazy.
How did you get over that?
I never really got under it, I suppose, in a weird way. Like, you just have to be rejected, and you just have to accept rejection, and you just can't really look into it. And rejection is the thing that massively phases me. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm quite content to sit opposite someone and disagree with them, and it be like, look, you don't believe in it, I do believe in it, but there's loads of stuff that I do value about your opinions in football that I'll take.
I want to talk about this because it's a lot of, like, we're an agency, so we help players kind of get to the next level. University in the US, clubs in Europe, and a lot of the thing that I talk about is rejection and dealing with how to say no, because players, you know, they reach out to one or two coaches, they don't reply, they leave them on red, and then they stop and they give up.
Yeah.
I think when I was trying to transfer universities, I messaged 200 coaches and one of them gave me a scholarship.
Nice.
What is, and I want to talk about like networking in football, because I think networking in football is so important and people don't really understand what does networking mean. People think networking means sending loads of messages and just waiting for one, but I think the more I realise about networking with the podcast, with people in football, with coaches, with agents, with scouts, with players, you need to have like a value before you start networking. I remember I used to go to, like when I was in university, you go to like a networking day or a student fair, and you would have no value because you're a student. You'd be like asking loads of questions, but they didn't really care who you were. But now, like with the podcast, we've got a certain amount of episodes, and online, I like to think we look quite good online. So people are like, okay, I want to be on that podcast, or okay, that's interesting for me. So because you're networking and people have a value and they see what you can give them, then you can go and network. So for you, with your substitution, and there'll be a lot of players listening to this that are like, wow, I'm a player and he had nothing and he had a good idea and he wanted to go and get something. You sent loads of, well, I don't know how you started, but for a player listening to this that maybe is at the start of their career, they're trying to network but they don't really know how, what's your advice?
That's a brilliant story. I love stories like that where you just have to like, I just think that's what differentiates people that do make it and don't make it. It's just like, how much do you want it? And I think in my head it was like, rejection is going to cost you this, but if you make it, it's going to be like this. And for me, that's just like a price that I don't know, in my head I can't even articulate it simply than it's worth it. That it's worth it. It's your dream.
Why were you hungry?
I want to win the Premier League. I just want to do it more than anything. I want to have a Premier League medal. I want to have a picture of me like with the trophy, and like I will. I know I will.
But there's other people that say the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Millions of us.
So there's other people that say the same. What makes you hungrier than the person next to you that says the same? How are you going to get there and that person is not?
I think the first is, I was always told a quote when I was like 18, just my first ever job was an internship at AFC Bournemouth in the academy, which again, arguably took some rejections to get there. But he said you have to be rejected 10,000 times to be successful. And so that, I was like, wow, like, if that's how many times I have to get rejected to maybe win the Premier League, like, that's the process I've got to go through. Like, you almost just challenged me to find 10,000 rejections. So I started counting them. And it was just like, I called up someone and I just reached out any means necessary. I did one, I don't know if I should advocate it really, but I used to guess emails. So I used to be like, Dan Ashworth at Newcastle. He will only have like 4 or 5 templates to an email. It'll either be D.Ashworth, it'll be Dashworth, it'll be Dan at NUFC. Do you know what I mean? There's only so many ways. And I would just sit there in the morning and just guess emails.
That's hungry.
Yeah, with the template, and just be like, one of these is going to land. One of them's going to land. And when it lands, that's the one I've got to make count. And I probably struggle with that one a little bit, is that the rejection thing doesn't scare me. So I'd throw as much to the wall as that would stick. But the one that would stick, sometimes at the start, I would then struggle to deliver on that. Because then I'd put too much pressure on myself, being like, God, you finally got one, mate. You've got to make it count now. And then again, that's a normalising of a process where you go, I was young, I was like 20, 21, do you know what I mean? So I'm learning myself, my self-awareness is building. But now I'm at a stage where it's like, I trust what I'm bringing. I trust that I can sit opposite someone and say, this is what I can bring. This is what I'm good at. This is probably not what I'm good at, but this is what you can expect from me, and this is what I will deliver. And I think that took a bit of time getting there, because for me, my journey, the belief probably should have come in earlier. I took a bit of time to get to that belief, which came from networking, where you would speak to people and they would go, like, bloody hell, Sammy, that's pretty good going, mate. You want to follow that? And it was only those things that I was like, okay, that's why I need to keep pushing on and stuff. Like, the rejection never scared me, but the self-belief is probably what pushed me to the whole nother level of I can go and make an impact.
How did you start? When and how did you start to believe in yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a great. I've always believed I can achieve something, but I think there can be a time of, I suppose, a little bit of imposter syndrome. Maybe like again when I was really young, of being like I'm a kid from Dorset. Do you know what I mean? Like you're going to be sit opposite some wicked managers, you know, that have won Champions Leagues, you know, all this sort of stuff, and you need to take out the narrative. You need to take out any narrative you have and be like, I've got something that you want, and I'm just going to deliver it. And I think that brought me confidence, because then I started doing well, and it was like, well, that's where it can take me.
Amazing.
But yeah, I was young. I was really young. You have to, it's a time process, isn't it? You have to learn yourself, I think.
That's really good advice. Sammy, I've got a quick fire round. Just 5 quick questions to end. First one, best super sub in football history?
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
One quality every great finisher must have?
Resilience.
Favourite team that you've ever, or favourite game that you've ever coached in?
The first international game I ever did. It's quick fire, so I'll make it quick. But we predicted what the opposition were going to do. We coached our players, all the subs, perfectly for it. Brought a sub on, scored 2 goals. It was ridiculous hours because it was international football. And I remember going to bed at 3:30 thinking,
Did my job.
This is the best thing in the world.
That's amazing. Starters or finishers? Who's harder to coach?
Ooh. Different challenges. Different. I don't know if I can give an answer to that one. Yeah, I think it's going to be different. yeah.
If you could sub in, last one, if you could sub into any match in history, what would it be?
One that had a great comeback. So, Barca PSG, 2016 quarter final, when it was like 6-1 and Sergio Roberto scored it last minute, like something like that. Liverpool at Istanbul, do you know what I mean, where you're 3-0 down at half time, you come on. It's a game where there was like a major comeback, and you just like, the atmosphere, Solskjaer, Munich United, a game like that, where the atmosphere is just beyond what you can feel as a person.
Amazing. That was an amazing episode, Sammy. Thank you so much for coming, guys. We'll tag Sammy's Instagram if you learned something, if there was something interesting or a topic. Make sure to send him a message and say thank you. But I think that advice at the end, kind of networking and dealing with saying no, that's something that like really sticks with me, and I really appreciate that. And I think your insight is amazing, Sammy. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much, Sam, and to the whole team for producing. And like I said, any questions or anything, reach out to me, and I'd be honoured to answer them.
Perfect, Sammy. Thank you so much.
Cheers.